Hi, and welcome to Indiana Normal's Cannabis Conversations with the Candidates. I'm your host, Neil Smith. On our panel this evening is Indiana Normal Vice Chairwoman Denise Beach. We have Monroe County Cannabis's Coalition's Brian Campbell.
Hello.
And medical cannabis advocate Shelley McDonald.
Hello.
Our guest this evening is Darin Kinser. He is running for sheriff in Lawrence County. It's in the southeastern corner of the state. Welcome, Darin.
Thank you for having me.
And it's somewhat unusual to have a sheriff's candidate being pro-cannabis. How did you come to the position that cannabis shouldn't be against the law?
I came to the conclusion the turning point was my mother back in 2017 when she passed away from cancer. She had stage 4 breast cancer, went into her bones. She was suffering. She wasn't able to eat very much. She was having nothing but pain. And a lot of people kept telling me that was the right product for her. I did a lot of research on it. I had other family in other states tell me that it worked for them to help relieve their issues. It's something that she needed, but Indiana wouldn't pass legalization. So I had to watch her suffer for 58 days. And I have friends that I know that uses those products, and I don't see nothing wrong with them every day. So that's where I stand on it.
All right. So as a personal experience, we find that a lot of people have to go through that personal tragedy a lot of times to understand that how cannabis is very helpful. Shelley, I believe you have a question.
I sure do. First off, Darin, thank you for sharing that story with us. I think that's what people really need to hear. So when you get this job as sheriff, do you view it more as a law enforcement type of position, or more of a protector of your community and their constitutional rights?
I think it's definitely a public servant of the community that protects their constitutional rights. That is the most important piece of being a sheriff. Yes, I do believe we are a law enforcement, but mostly it is to make sure that our constitutional rights are protected.
Thank you.
The sheriff is the top constitutional officer in the county.
Correct.
Brian?
Yeah, if elected sheriff, what is your message to all of the Lawrence County residents and anyone traveling through Lawrence County that might have cannabis flower, concentrates, vapes, the rubs, salves, anything like that?
What was the first part of your question?
If elected sheriff, what is your message to people that live in Lawrence County and might be traveling through Lawrence County with those products?
Well, I can tell you, if I'm county sheriff, they won't have to worry about my deputies when they're rolling through with those products. But I can't speak on behalf of the next town in the same county over what they may do. What I can tell you is they're protected on my side of not coming in the county jail. I will stand my ground to make sure that those misdemeanor charges are cited at most. But they shouldn't be even cited. They should just be left alone to freely travel and do the things they need to do for their families. But I won't let them in my county jail. So my message to those folks is I'm coming to help. Just be ready for me.
All right. Are you planning on working with working with the prosecutor to try to get it to where it's at least decriminalized?
I've held conversations with our current prosecutor in reference to marijuana, specifically on the medical side and some recreational side. He's told me where he stands with it. He's definitely, I don't believe at this current moment in favor of legalization. I think he believes the way he's told me is that there's still medical journals that shows that it's bad for you. So I want to be able to have the opportunity to sit down with him, sit down with people in the industry that knows this industry better than him, and give him some education on what the goods are, what the good side of it is. I think when we get people out of that status quo and we quit teaching them the negative sides and we start showing them the positives, then we may be able to change him. And that's my goal is just to educate him and show him why he needs to change his stance on this and become the next Ryan Mears in my book. So,
do you think that's going to be a point of friction between you and the prosecutor?
I do believe at the starting point, it's going to be a friction there's going to be friction between us. But I'm not going to let that friction guide me. I'm going to stand my ground with him, even with the court system side of it, with the judges. I'm going to stand my ground. That's what we need in this state, in this county. And I believe that you can't build a house without a foundation first. And I believe local government's the foundation. And that's where we're going to start at by legalizing it in the state of Indiana. Is we got to get the prosecutors and the sheriffs on board to understand that this is the right thing to do. We got to start protecting Hoosiers or anyone traveling through our county. And I'm hoping that if once elected and we have the chances to do that education, that he'll be able to come around to it and that friction will disappear and we'll be able to actually.
Good. How do other, no, I'm sorry, we had a little bit of a breakup there. Have you discussed it with other law enforcement agencies? How do they feel about it?
I mean, I know that there's some law enforcement agents within the city departments around that do agree that, you know, they need to start letting it go and stop wasting their time and taxpayer money on it. But I haven't had a chance to sit down with the current administrations, like say the chief of police of Bedford or the new chief in Olytic or Mitchell. I haven't had a chance to. It's really hard to talk to the people here in Lawrence County on that level because they just feel like they don't need to speak to the public. So it's really hard to get that meeting with them. But I'm going to continue to keep raising awareness. We'll be out there with our events. We'll be at the fair with everybody. I'll be able to see the prosecutor again there too as well. And hopefully maybe we'll be able to sit down and actually have a true meeting.
So Darin, I kind of heard you talking about the pushback you've been getting, and even before we went on air, we were talking about kind of the mentality when they come out of police academies, that kind of thing. To me, it sounds like an education thing, and you also mentioned that they just really need educated more than anything. So how do you plan to educate both the department, especially the sheriffs coming out, and break the perceived stigma of cannabis users?
I think that's going to be back to, you know, we have across the country in legal states, we have now what's called cannabis coaches. And cannabis coaches are able to go out and talk to the elderly. They're able to talk to even the middle-aged folks, and they're able to educate them on what the benefits are. I think the law enforcement agencies need to stop looking at the textbook of no, and they need to start looking in those avenues and start looking at coaches and what they're doing to teach these people. Talk to the patients themselves who are getting the medical recovery they need, so that way they're able to hear from them to say, you know what, these people are not suffering anymore, and I'm here to take them away and put them in a cage because they're doing exactly what I would say God intended, which was to give them a plant to use that would help them. It all comes down to a plant. That's the problem. It's a plant. It's not a chemically driven drug. It is a plant made by a higher being that was sent here for us. We don't have problems with broccoli. We don't have problems with asparagus, but we do have problems with marijuana, and I don't understand that.
So true. So do you have any plan like to educate all the people under you or that you're working with? Do you think they would be open to anything?
I'm hoping so. I plan to reach out to organizations, to medical physicians that deal with this on a daily basis in the legal states. I plan to reach out to sheriffs across the country in legal states and get their opinions on what's happening with their counties. I want them to be able to get on Zoom meetings with these officers and talk with these officers about what they're experiencing since they legalized marijuana. Those are my priorities. But my number one priority, and just be honest, and I'll tell the voters this is I might not be able to break the stigma on day one, but I will order them to break the stigma on day one, meaning they will follow my rules. They're going to be their leader, and they will do what I need them to do, and that will be to leave people alone when it comes to victimless crime.
Awesome. Thank you. Neil?
As sheriff, what would you do to educate the non-law enforcement people in your county on cannabis so as to reduce any further problems of people abusing cannabis?
I think that's going to be our deputies and our local law enforcement agencies getting out in the public and be the public service that they were hired to be, to talk to the people and to explain to them how things are going, how it works, and what they need to do to understand marijuana better than the way that they're getting taught now. And I think that's going to be the biggest step forward starting off.
Do you think that might have something like a reverse DARE program or something for your county?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned DARE, because that's the first piece we got to start with, reorganizing. Because right now we're going in and we're teaching how the negatives are on it. We got to reorganize DARE completely and get marijuana out of that program. Let's talk about the opioids and the meth in that program. Let's leave the marijuana alone.
Yes, very much. Shelley?
Very good, a great conversation. So let's continue this. What do you plan to do about all the people that are currently caught up or about to be caught up in the child protection services? What is your plan to protect those parents?
Well, first I want them to know I'm coming to help. I'm on my way. Just give me time. Let me get through this election. I'm coming to help. I can't help the people probably 100% that's already in the system, working the system. That was before my administration. But I will do everything I can to research those cases and look at what our officers did. If there was any negligence, any wrongdoing, violations of their constitutional rights or any of that, then I will be bringing that up to the court system to look into as well. So I want them to know that I'm coming to help. I'm not there yet, but I'm working my way that direction.
Beautiful, thank you.
With opioids killing so many Hoosiers and cannabis being shown to curb at least a quarter of the overdose deaths, would you plan on making cannabis arrests and investigations your department's lowest priority as an official policy so that your officers could concentrate on more egregious and violent crimes?
It's a good question. I actually intend to tell the state troopers that. I'm the highest law enforcement official in the county, so it's my county in my book. And they want to travel on my roads, they're going to leave people alone for marijuana. We need to focus on the opioids. We need to focus on the fentanyl and the methamphetamine. That's what we need to spend our focus on. And I plan to tell that to all agencies the first day as sheriff, is to send out a memo to all agency leadership to let them know that this is how it's going to work in Lawrence County moving forward, and we need to figure out a way to work together to make it happen.
Do you feel like the other departments seem to be willing to work with cannabis advocates more down there, or not so?
I think there's a lot of people in Lawrence County that supports marijuana. I also think that there's a lot of people probably in local government that supports it. It's just a matter of talking with them and actually showing them the true answers to marijuana and what it's done for the people, the good side of it. And so to answer your question, yes, I think they're willing to work, but it's going to take someone willing to make that change. I don't think any of the current Republican candidates that are running, I don't think either one of them will even attempt to start that conversation.
Why not? What are they afraid of?
That's a question, the $1 million question that we've been trying to answer for a very long time, Neil. I don't know what they're afraid of, and I wish I had that answer. I wish someone would tell me the answer, because this is long overdue. This shouldn't have been in 2022. It shouldn't have been in the late 1990s or early 2000s for Colorado or California or any of them. This should have been done years ago. Prohibition should have never even started in the first place. The failed war on drugs doesn't work, and we all know it.
Marijuana, the drugs are winning the war on drugs. That's for sure.
That's absolute truth. Absolute truth, Denise.
Yeah. So how would your deputies deal with someone that they knew had an opioid problem?
When you say they knew they had an opioid problem, is this before they interacted with them? You mean they knew before interacting they had the problem?
Either way, like if they knew and kind of or ran into them and they knew they had an opioid problem, what did they generally do? Is it just cuff them and stuff them type of thing, or?
They will do anything they can to find the way to make the arrest, because that's what keeps the revolving door in the money scam in Lawrence County court systems going. They will do what they can to make the arrest, and that's something that we have to work on to resolve. We got to fix that immediately. We got to stop harassing people. If they haven't broken the law, then we shouldn't be interfering in their daily lives.
And would it be different if they knew that they were using cannabis?
I think it's the same way at the current moment, the way the status quo is, the way the agencies are. It's just they're going to continue on no matter what, finding a way to make that arrest. It doesn't matter to them if it's marijuana or if it's opioids at this point in time. I hear them say all the time they want to get the meth and the opioids out. It's the biggest problem we've got, but I'm still seeing marijuana arrests every day. So they're saying one thing, but they're doing another.
are they do they realize that marijuana is an exit drug to opioids? I mean, there's tons of studies out there. Do they know this? Do they want to know this? Are they open to learning?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that question is I think they know that answer, but they're stuck in that status quo training mode of no, it's a gateway drug, it's bad for you, and I don't care what your excuse is. We've got to educate them on the truth. We have to get them in the position where they understand that it's not a gateway drug, that there are actual live human beings out there that were stuck on opioids that doctors had prescribed to them. We're here in the pharmaceutical states, so we can talk about it more than anybody can. The pharmaceutical companies are winning by prescribing these drugs every day. That does way, way more harm than marijuana ever thought it could ever do, because marijuana can't harm you. That's the problem. Is they want to. They're stuck in the status quo of no, and I'm not stuck in the status quo of no.
Okay, that's great, because I feel like they are cutting people off of their opioids, which is leading them to the meth, the heroin, the street drugs that have fentanyl in it. And if they would be open to know that, cannabis is an exit drug, I feel as though it would help everybody. It'd help your department not be overcrowded. It would help the people. Obviously, they're not dying of ODs. Is that, do they see that at all?
Not the current administration and not the current opponent against the current administration from the Republican side. Neither one of them see that. They don't look at it like that. They just say it's the poison to our children. All of it is, and they group marijuana right into that as the poison to our children. And it's selfishness the way they think. They're not willing to open their eyes and see the truth. Again, I go back to it's the status quo of no. They're trained like robots to think that way. They're not trained any other way. And until the government goes in and changes the robotic thought processes and sends them a new neural link to be able to update their program, we're not going to see a change in our local law enforcement, at least not in this county, not any current time soon.
Not until you're out.
That's correct.
Okay, Neil.
I am the only candidate on the ballot this year that will support legalized marijuana, that will support leaving people alone. I read a phrase many years ago from the John Birch Society. I don't know if any of you are aware of John Birch Society, but he made a statement many years ago. He said, freedom and responsibility. He said, in a free society, people should have the right to make choices, even if those choices may harm them. With freedom comes responsibility. If we turn our responsibility over to the government, we turn our freedom over at the same time. And that stuck with me since I was probably 15 years old. I'm 41 almost now, and that stuck with me since I was 15. And it's a true statement. We got to stop turning our responsibility over to the government. We got to be able to start making decisions for our own self, our own bodies. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm a libertarian is leaving me alone, getting government out of my life so I can focus on keeping my well-being the way it's supposed to be.
And I just want to also tell our viewers out there, if you see Darin's sign, you're in his district. He is for decriminalization. Just remember that when you go to the polls. And don't forget to go to the polls. Neil?
Absolutely. I just want to point out this sign was designed by Michael Porter at Porter's Barbershop. He done a wonderful job on this because he put the Constitution in there. And it stands out. Everyone says, Darin, no matter what, whether you win or lose the election this year, you got the nicest signs in the county. So I give props to Michael Porter for that. So.
And from what better of a supporter than the town barbershop?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How much time would be freed up, do you think, for your officers if they didn't have to deal with cannabis?
I don't know the 100% number of how much time they spend on it because they don't like to release stats in this county a whole lot, specifically to me, especially since I'm running. But I think it would free up a lot of their time of looking for that person that's got the tail light or the license plate light out so they can get them stopped and get them for the marijuana. I think it'd free up a lot of their time, probably more than 25% of it. Because I'm a supporter of marijuana, but I'm also, if you see my Facebook page or on my sheriff's page and what my press release stated, is I'm a true believer that victimless crime needs to stop being punished. So what the victimless crime is on all levels. Not just in marijuana, but specifically on marijuana, but there's other levels of victimless crime as well. I believe that nonviolent offenders should not be housed in our county jail. So we would be freeing up a lot of time to focus on the violent offenders. I think that's what jails were created for.
Now, have you talked to any of the current deputies that you would be their boss if you win the election. How they feel about all this?
I had one employee there tell me that I would never be his boss, and I've not really had deputies here in Lawrence County are not allowed to really speak publicly in reference to a political campaign. They're not allowed to put signs in their yards or anything to show who they support. So I really can't get a definite answer out of any actual deputy. I truly deep down believe some will retire if I win, because this is not the way they're used to doing things. And I think that's when they'll take their retirement. I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I was talking to somebody that works at the Lawrence County Sheriff's Department, didn't give me a name, but said, hey, if one of my opponents wins, 7 people are going to retire and walk out. So, I mean, there's going to be change with every administration. I know I'm going to lose some people, but I'm prepared to do that, because I'm going to bring people in that's like-minded, that understands that people need their freedoms, and that we need to stop going after people for simple possession, and specifically with marijuana.
Yeah, I've noticed it in a lot of counties that when you can, well, not necessarily county sheriff's departments, local police departments too. They're tired of messing with it. It's more trouble. It's more paperwork. They know it's not causing the problem. But like you said, a lot of departments, they're not allowed to have an opinion, I guess.
Right.
It doesn't seem right on itself. Could you elaborate a little bit more about how the Lawrence County court system is stacked against people? How does that work?
How the court system is stacked against the people?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a money scam. That's what they're doing here. They're arresting people in Lawrence County, say for possession, marijuana, methamphetamine, opiates. They're arresting them. They're letting them bond right out of jail. They're going out on the streets. They may even go to a rehabilitation facility here locally that's here. They'll get released from that. They're right back in the system, and literally they're not stacked to help the people. They're stacked against the people just to continue to take their money. That's what it's all about. It's all about the money. The picture behind you is the green that it should be about, but no, it's about the Benjamins on their green side. And that's what they do every day in Lawrence County. Like I said earlier, 1,600 people were processed through the Lawrence County Jail in 21. I know some of them probably was in there for FTAs and PTRs, but if you was to give every one of them a bond and you gave them the lowest bond, which is a Class B misdemeanor, which is $300, they would have had to pay the court. That's a $500,000 that the court brought in just that year alone, and they're doing that every single year. So they're not stacked for the people. They're definitely stacked against the people.
Now, if you were elected as sheriff, and say somebody's on probation for a separate offense, do you support drug testing for cannabis?
Again, I think they need to leave people alone for cannabis. So I'm all about talking with them, sitting down with them and saying, look, how can we reorganize the drug test to take off cannabis off the drug test? We don't need to be testing for that anymore. It's time to leave people alone for a plan. It's the same type of ordeal, and this is my personal opinion, is saying there's no difference between John going home and smoking a joint and relaxing, watching a TV show, playing with his kid, then I'm gonna use the deputy officer as an example, him getting off work, going home, drinking a beer with his child. There's no difference in the two. The only difference is they say one's legal and one's not. And alcoholism kills more people every single year than marijuana ever thought about it, because marijuana kills 0 people. So, I mean, it's all about a game. It really is. It's a game. And it's time to end that game once and for all, specifically here in Lawrence County.
Okay, Shelley.
Well, and let's kind of continue that, because from one of the things that I find somewhat troubling in our school system right now are the amount of children that are entering the court system because maybe their coat smells like a little bit of weed, from mom and dad smoking in the living room. We still got the drug jugs coming and searching the lockers, sniffing the cars out in the parking lot. What can we do from your perspective here, not only as responsible parents and users, but how do we protect our kids from this? Because we're still telling them, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. Report your parents. But
I
at the
think
same time, we're kind of saying, hey, it's not so bad. What do you say to the members of the community that kind of throw that argument at you?
I go back to reorganizing the DARE program. Getting the marijuana out of that program is the number one starting point. Focus on what we need to focus on, which is the methamphetamine, the opioid problem, the fentanyl problem. Once we start doing that, that'll be step one. Step two would be, you know, if a child does come into the school and maybe somehow they picked up mom's cannabis on an accident, or maybe they chose to take it in there, you know, maybe we'll do the right thing to confiscate it. And we'll have a conversation with the parents just to say, hey, you know, make sure your child's not bringing this to school. But it's not going to be where my officers are going to say, oh, we found that cannabis. Well, then let's get a warrant and let's go knock down mom's door and let's take her to jail. So that way the child doesn't have a parent at home to help that child anymore. You know, that's the problem we face is that when we take someone to jail, we're not just harming the inmate that we're putting in the Lawrence County Jail because of marijuana. We're harming the family. We're harming their child. We're harming their workforce, their job. We're giving them a lot of reasons why they should hate us. And we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be going after the people that are doing marijuana. We should let them have their jobs. There's a lot of companies nowadays that ain't even testing, that are actually switching over now and getting out of testing for marijuana. And they're the smart companies, and we need to continue that drive forward and doing that with our schools and getting that program changed in the DARE program, getting it changed and not teaching our kids to come snitch out your mom and dad, because, you know, that's just dirty. That's dirty playing right there. That's all that is. It's to get a 5-year-old that doesn't really seem to understand the question, but understands what he's looking at and says, yeah, my mommy has that. That's not right to take advantage of a child that way. And that's something that I will make sure to train my officers that that's not going to happen anymore.
Thank you.
We've got another viewer question. What is the arrest versus conviction rate? Do you know what that is?
In Lawrence County, what they do is they stack charges. And they stack charges for one reason and one reason only. So that way they can tell you, hey, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get rid of these 3 if you plead out to these. And that's what they do in Lawrence County. So I want to say the conviction rate's probably pretty high. Again, those numbers are not given to me. I wish I had better numbers for you on that, but I would say the conviction rate's pretty high when it comes to that, because again, they get them into plea bargains is what they do. They stack them purposely to get them, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to go do the work to do the investigation to get the real evidence on the major crimes of it. So they're like, look, we'll get you for this, that we found this little pile of marijuana in your car, but we really didn't have enough for the meth. So we'll drop this meth if you just tell us you had the weed. And that's something that we got to work with the courts to stop immediately as well. That's going to go back to a sheriff sitting down in a good meeting with the prosecutor and the judges, the probation teams, the drug court, and all them, and just sitting down and having a conversation and saying, look, what do we got to do to stop this? What do we got to do to work together to make it easier, so that way you don't have all these caseloads? Get these people out of here that should not be in here for simple possession. That's just where we're at on it.
Now, you were talking about how they stack the charges. I know they like to put OWI on there too, if they have to, if they find weed, there's probably paraphernalia. So boom, there's 2. They'll try to do an OWI. What are your thoughts on our current tests for operating?
I don't believe Lawrence County has the technology to be able to test on the roadside. I mean, has that technology actually been physically made here in Indiana yet, or presented to Indiana law enforcement? I don't think it has, but I know I've heard it's coming in the works in the near future, and it may already be here by now. My apologies if it is. Look, somebody smokes a joint 30 days ago. They may be a 6-foot guy that weighs 200 some pounds. Their muscle, the fat in their muscles where marijuana stores, from the way I've always understood research of marijuana, it stores in the fat cells a lot. It could take 30 days or 45 days or sometimes even longer for it to get out of a person's system. So we definitely want to look at ways to get people not to drive and do the drug. Or to me, it's not a drug, it's just a plant. But we want to look for ways to get them to not drive if they're using it that day. But to say somebody uses it 30 days ago and they get pulled over today and they blow in it, or however the test is, and it says they got marijuana in their system, that's just outrageous to me. And I can't support that being a true evidentiary fact for a court case. I don't think we should be able to use that in an investigative manner.
It seems to be a problem all over the state of Indiana. Plea bargaining seems to be the first line of of offense, if you will, on
Absolutely.
that. Darin, we're going to continue the conversation with you in just a moment, but right now we've got to go pay some bills. Please patronize our sponsors. They're helping us keep this on the air. We'll be back.
Indiana Normal memberships are back. Help us raise nonprofit dollars by becoming a member of Indiana Normal. The money raised will be used to educate the public about cannabis reform in Indiana, only for $25 a year. Visit www.indiananormal. Hometown CBD in Plainfield with a great variety of Delta 8 and CBD edibles, Delta 8 THC cartridges, and CBD oils. Hometown CBD, your source for high quality CBD products you can trust in the greater Plainfield area.
And we are back, and our conversation with Darin will continue. Brian, you lead off this half hour.
All righty. Do you think that Lawrence County residents have the constitutional right to use cannabis?
I do. I do believe it's their constitutional right. I don't think we should be able to tell them what plant they can and can't use. Is it written in the Constitution? Probably no, but I definitely want to take a look at it in reference to that side of it. But I do believe it's just their God-given right.
So
Now, with constitutional rights in mind, a lot of people have religious rights, and using cannabis as part of their religion and their religious practice. If you were to become sheriff, what would be the proper method of communication between a resident and law enforcement agency in order to prevent that resident's religious rights from being violated if cannabis is used in their religious practice?
My answer to it is very clear, Brian. I believe all people should have the right to use cannabis products personally, medically. I don't think it should be limited to a specific group of people. So therefore, I won't be looking at them as a religious use of it. I will be looking at it as their personal right to be using it. So I won't limit it to their religious rights.
All right.
I mean, that's the best way I can feel to answer that question, because I feel like if I say, well, it's okay for this specific Christian group to use that, then I'm saying it's not okay for another group. And to me personally, I think it's everyone's right to be able to use that for their personal use. That makes them feel better, whether that be insomnia, they can't go to sleep, whether that be they're having hunger issues where they can't get themselves to be hungry enough to eat, or vice versa, medical issues of any sort that requires that type of pain relief. They should just have that right. And I shouldn't be limiting that to a certain group.
Well, that's the answer.
So with that said, after you're elected sheriff, what about if someone is growing in their home? What do you think about a plant, a couple plants? What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I think it's the right of the people to use that product for what they need it for. It's not my place to tell them what they can and can't have when it comes to that personal product. I personally don't see an issue with it. Now, when they go and if they take that product and they try to sell it to children, then we have an issue. But if they're using it for their own personal use, growing it for their own personal use in their home, whether that be one plant or 10 plants, 10 might be a large number for some people, but I'm just saying, I think it's their personal right to do that. And I go back to what I said with John Birch earlier, freedom and responsibility. In a free society, people should have the right to make choices. If we turn our responsibility over to the government, we turn our freedom over too. And I don't think we should be turning our freedom over to the government at all. And I think that plan is definitely our freedom. So.
Well, I definitely appreciate your response on that, because we were talking to another candidate, 10 plants sounds like a lot, but if you're growing for your own medical purposes, and our seasons in Indiana, that could be your year's worth of medical supplies right there. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to add to that really quick is that a lot of people don't realize I've done research on CBD products and different marijuana products for medical use. And a lot of people don't know how much marijuana it takes to make a CBD product or a certain product that they need for their medical use. It might take 20 plants just to get one vial that they need. And the doctor says, man, you need 3 vials of that per day. So that means I'm going to need a large quantity in order to make the true medicine I need. I don't know how much stuff Eli Lilly uses to create their prescription drugs, but I'm sure it's not just a tiny little amount. It takes probably a lot to get it into what they need it to be. And that's where I'm at with the marijuana plant as well. So 10 might seem like a large amount to some people, but to a lot of people, patients that need that medical use, 10's not enough.
Darin, I do appreciate that you've done the research, because just to make like the RSO that Neil was talking about, it takes a ton of product to make a little bit of oil. And you do start small, but they crank you up so quickly. So I do appreciate you doing the research and realizing that it sounds like a lot, but it's really not for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Neil?
Yes. We touched on this briefly before, but I'd like to explore it a little bit more. When Ryan Mears did the deprioritization of Marion County, he was attacked by Attorney General Todd Rokita. Rokita also filed a lawsuit against him, and Rokita got a bill introduced into the legislature this past session to make county prosecutors fall in line with the exact letter of the law.
Was that Senate Bill 165?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you think other law enforcement agencies would respond to a Lawrence County deprioritization?
I think my honest opinion is, behind closed doors, they'd go, we've actually got someone we can work with. But out in the public, in front of some of the other people, they're probably going to be like, we can't have this. But, it's a matter of working with them every day, sitting down, going to the sheriff's associations meetings, talking with other county sheriffs, explaining what we're trying to do in our county. And I think by talking with them and educating them, I think we can bring them to our side. But it's going to take some time. It's not going to be an overnight process. But I think we can definitely get them to our side. But they just got to get out of that mindset of the status quo equals no. We got to educate them.
Okay, Shelley, you have a question, I believe.
I do. You kind of touched on briefly how your department would handle vehicle searches, which basically means unless there is absolutely a just cause, vehicle searches are off limit. Did I understand that right?
Yes.
Yes. And the Constitution is very clear on the Fourth Amendment. You can't just search someone illegally. Now, if they see something with the physical eye, they don't have to have a search warrant. They can physically see it, they can get it. But when you've got a vehicle that has something in the, that's hidden in the vehicle, we got to make sure we're following the law. We got to make sure we're following the Constitution and not violating individual rights. So we need, if that individual that's owning that vehicle, driving that vehicle that time they get stopped, if he doesn't want them to search his vehicle, they don't have the right to just open that door. They can get their canine dogs out. They can walk the dog around the car. They can have their free air sniff that they want under Terry v. Ohio. They can have all that they want. But what they can't have is they can't have a notion that, oh, my dog hit your car, so I'm going to go ahead and get inside the car. I can tell you a short, quick story if you've got the time. In 1999, I was pulled over by a former officer of Bedford City Police. God rest his soul, he's passed away on us. But I was pulled over in 1999 by this officer. He claimed I ran a stop sign. I was like 2 weeks or so from being 18 years old. This is how long ago we're talking about. And I had a couple friends in the car with me, and he pulled me over and he said, "Hey, you ran a stop sign. My apologies. Didn't know I did that." He brought me back my license and said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a verbal warning. Don't run a stop sign again." I'm getting ready to pull off from the scene when he says, hey, stop for a minute. And he walks back up to me and he asked me if I step out of the vehicle real quick. I didn't understand. So I stepped out of the vehicle and he said, "Do you have any drugs or alcohol in the car or weapons that I need to know about?" And I said, "No, there's nothing in the vehicle." And he says, "What about your two friends?" And I was like, "Wait a minute. I don't know what's on them. I don't search my friends before they get in my car. That's not, they from as far as I'm concerned, they have nothing because I didn't know of them having anything." He asked me if he could search my vehicle. I told him, I said, "Hey, I don't have a problem if you search it as long as you give me a search warrant to state that you can search that vehicle. The Fourth Amendment's very clear, and I want a search warrant." He says, "Well, I don't have one. Hold on for a minute. I'm gonna get my dog out." So he got his canine dog out of his car and he walked it around the car, and the dog hit on the right side of my vehicle. At that time, the officers jumped in. The car started rocking like they were having adult time frame in the back seat. And the only thing they walked out of that car with was a 30-channel old scanner from Radio Shack. They used to have the weather frequency, the police, and the fire frequency. We'd have them at our homes years ago. A lot of people don't do that anymore, but I had one in the vehicle. I was working to be a volunteer fireman at that time. I was looking to join the volunteer fire force. I was listening to it, just kind of interested in how things worked. And they found that radio, and it didn't even have no batteries in it. They put the batteries back in the radio, and they hit the button on theirs after they turned it on, and it stopped on the frequency. And they arrested me that day for unlawful use of a police radio, a Class B misdemeanor. And the trial court judge, she's still a judge to this day, but not in Lawrence County. She's now in the bankruptcy court in New Albany. But she found me guilty of unlawful possession of a police radio. We took it to the appellate court, and then now that it's went through the appellate court, and I won under DK versus Indiana. I proved, and in case anybody doesn't know, they can read DK versus Indiana. It's about a juvenile. I'm Darin Kinser. I'm the DK in that story, and they proved then that the appellate court said, "Look, you didn't have a warrant. You admitted you didn't have a warrant. You admitted Darin asked you for a warrant. You admitted you got in the car without the warrant. So therefore, you violated his individual rights. This case has been reversed, and I won the case." And I tell everybody every day, make sure you stand your ground, even if your car is empty and nothing's in there. You still stand your ground, because if you give them one right, they'll take the second right, and if you give them two, they'll take a third. Don't give them your Fourth Amendment. That's stand your ground. Make them get a warrant.
Thank you. Just trying to follow up there. At some point, perhaps the canines might need to be retired. What is your plan for the canines? What's best case scenario?
Well, the first question I would have if I knew I had a canine that only was working supposedly on marijuana, even though I'm not 100% believer in canines sniffing marijuana, but they say they can, so we're going to stick with the "they can do it" phrase. The first thing is does the officer that's utilizing that canine right now, does he want that dog? It's been in his family for several years as a canine unit. His family's attached to that dog. They may want that dog, number one. Number two, there is agencies from the White River Humane Society to the Greene County White River Humane Society that has families that are looking for well-trained dogs for home. The only reason why they would want to get rid of a dog, and I heard not too long ago that the state police made a statement that they would pretty much have to they'd have to put dogs down. And to me, that's animal cruelty. If you're putting a dog down for absolutely no reason, to me, that's animal cruelty. And there's families that want those dogs. So to answer your question, Shelley, retired dogs is real simple. The officer gets the first dibs at it. Second is we put it up for adoption. Unless they're trying to tell us that these dogs are actually more dangerous than what they're wanting us to know about. Are they too dangerous? Will they hurt an individual? Because if that's the case, then I mean, downright honesty, we shouldn't be using dogs that could hurt individuals in the first place. So.
Oh, that's interesting. Interesting, Brian.
Yeah. If you was elected sheriff, would you randomly drug test your employees, including the cannabis panel test? Or do you feel that officers, like you said in your words, that every citizen has the right to use cannabis, that officers also have the right to use cannabis if it's in the medical sense? Or even
I'm in favor of removing cannabis from the drug testing period. I think we're overdue on that. Was it 32, 37 states now have legalized marijuana on the either on the medical or recreational
37.
side. 37 on the medical side, and we're overdue. It's time to stop doing that. Now I'm going to continue to look for the fentanyl, the methamphetamines, the opioid uses, stuff like that. But no, I'm not going to be drug testing for marijuana to my agency.
That's great to hear, actually. So why do you think that law enforcement opposes legalization so much? Not only just in your county, but statewide, prosecutors, everyone.
Did you hear that? It was the cash register making the noise again at the courthouse. Hold on. They just made another buck. That's the reason right there. That's the answer to your question. The cash register drawer keeps chinging. The drawer keeps opening, the cash keeps going in. We got to stop the money. We got to stop the money scam that's going on in every one of these counties. We have to stop the revolving door. That's honestly the reason why they don't want to give up legalization.
But they've seen all the money that taxes bring in from the marijuana. If some of that could be allocated to law enforcement, do you think that would change their minds at all?
I think it would change leadership's minds possibly, but it's not going to change the individual officer's mindset. I mean, his training is, like I said, it's the status quo of no. It's not going to change his until they actually start working one-on-one with each other to say enough is enough. This is the education that we want to provide you. Here's an opportunity to learn, and I think that's what it's going to take. It's all going to come down to education.
Okay, and do you feel that where do you think taxes should go?
Where taxes should go?
Off of, like, if cannabis does become legal, do you think part of it should go to law enforcement, say education of law enforcement?
It should definitely go to education. It should definitely go to retraining these officers on what it is. It should also go to the medical side of things to help families in need of medical help.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Helping pay for schools. Helping families, the low-cost families that don't have the money to help with their medical needs. It needs to go to families like that. It needs to go to educating officers. There's a lot of avenues for it to go to. Knowing Indiana, it'll probably go in a pocket.
Right. But I think you're right. I like the idea of it going to families in need and also to help educate law enforcement officers. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Neil?
It's just mind-boggling that cops think like that, like you've described. Why? I mean, the very nature of the job of police work is supposed to be protecting people, and that means you don't oppress the ones you're protecting. At least seems kind of logical to me.
They forgot the protect and serve analogy many moons ago. There's a lot of departments that don't even put that on their car anymore. It's time to get back to the protect and serve mentality that the law enforcement agencies were designed to do. And it's going to take some time, but I think we can get there.
Yeah. Brian, I think we're up to you, aren't we?
Well, actually, I've got a question real quick,
okay.
kind of on that token. Darin, you're making a lot of great points. You're gonna probably get some haters on this. So what do you say to people that are going to be your attackers for not enforcing the law as it's written?
Well, I think the best words for that is I'm not going to enforce an unjust law. If it's an unlawful law, I'm not going to enforce it. And I believe it's an unlawful law. I think marijuana prohibition has been unlawful since they started it. Like I said earlier, the war on drugs has failed the people. And be honest with you, I'm going to have haters regardless, and I'm going to have to deal with that. And I'm just going to give them the truth. I'm going to tell them, look, this is where I can give you the education. This is where I can give you the numbers. If you need more help, come back to me. I'll show you more. It's just teaching people to get out of that status quo. No, it's bad. It's a gateway. That's just where I'm at on it.
Oh, I wish you the best of luck on that, Brian.
Yeah, I think law enforcement agencies would look at your department for its cannabis position.
I hate to ask you, can you say that one more time?
How do you think other law enforcement agencies will look at your department for its position on cannabis? Do you think
I think that we'll be able to set this, I think we'll be able to set our county as an example for the state. I think we'll be able to show other counties what we're doing and how this works. I think in the long run, as we educate our officers and educate our community, we'll have other agencies from other counties coming to us, asking us, how did we implement this? How did we get the people to understand where we were coming from on this? And I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be overnight or in the first week, but I do think within the first 12 months or 6 months of being in office, I think we can really start a program to educate the community and educate other departments around us.
Do you think that cannabis will make a difference as far as the opioid crisis in your town? Because I know Lawrenceburg, Highway 50 runs right there straight to Cincinnati. It's on the front lines of heroin trafficking. I mean, a lot of it comes in through Lawrenceburg. I know you have the methadone clinics, you have a lot of opiate users that are having to go there from out of county, travel on in. Do you think that if cannabis was put out there as a replacement for these drugs, or in combination to try to get off of them, that it would benefit your county greatly?
Yeah, when you say Lawrenceburg, you're just talking about Dearborn County over there, right? You're not.
Lawrence County. I know. Okay. Lawrence County.
Yeah. So I think people will be able to understand that once they start utilizing the medical products that are really made for us when it comes to medical marijuana, that it will lower our opioid use. I really do believe it will, especially if we stop enforcing the laws on marijuana. Because if I'm going to go to jail, some people here tell me if I'm going to go to jail for using a plant, then I'm just going to use the other stuff. And then I look at them and I shake my head. I'm like, that's not the right way to think. I want them to be able to feel comfortable in the product they use. And I think marijuana is the right way to do it for medical purposes. And I think if we do that, it'll lower the opioid use. I think more people would switch over to marijuana. I've looked at research in reference to other states like Colorado. There's some research out there that tells you that crime rates drop, opioid use drops, overdoses are dropping with opioids and fentanyl and methamphetamine. I've seen some research that says that it stayed balanced about where it's at, but it didn't increase. And that's the biggest piece of that is that we're not going to increase our crime by allowing marijuana use to be legal. We're going to lower our opioid use. So I'm hoping, because we're having a major issue here in Lawrence County, we're losing people to opioid overdoses. And I think by not enforcing marijuana and giving them the opportunity to have the product that was really designed to help them, I think we'll see our pain clinics start to reduce the amount of people going in there, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Darin, we really appreciate you coming to our show today. What else would you like to add that we haven't touched on?
Honestly, I don't have anything else really off the top of my head at the current moment. I just want people to remember that I'm here to help them. We're on our way to help them. Check out our Facebook. Understand what victimless crime is. If you don't know the definition, please look it up, because that's exactly where we're at on it. My opponents are already talking about how I'm wrong about victimless crime. And I just got to continue to educate them. So please, I hope people will take the time to look up victimless crime, understand where I'm going with it. I'm not telling people that methamphetamine use is a victimless crime. I'm saying marijuana is a victimless crime. And that's what I'm talking about. And they're wanting to switch my wording to methamphetamines, to opioids, to fentanyl. And yes, I want to go after the dealers of fentanyl. I want to go after the dealers of methamphetamine, but I don't want to go after the marijuana. Leave them alone. Let's focus our time and our resources and our money on methamphetamine. And that's what I'm hoping people will get out of me talking with you guys today, and what they're seeing on my Facebook pages, and what we're saying as we continue on throughout this campaign.
Well, we sure need more people like you running for office. That was Lawrence County is, you've got you got a fairly good population there, don't you?
A little over 40-some thousand, I believe, in the 45,000 in the county, and the city of Bedford holds about 16,000, 17,000 people. So we're not a real big county. We're not small at the same time. That's why when you look at those numbers of like 206 people arrested for simple possession of marijuana, you're just like, in a town with 17,000 people. Some people are like, that's a small number, but no, it's a large number, especially when the fees add up. They make a lot of money off of that. So we've got to stop it.
Anybody else on the panel have anything?
Darin, are you ready for the influx of people that are going to move there if you get elected?
You know what? I've been wanting a Five Guys Burgers and Fries in Bedford, Indiana for many years, and the owner of Five Guys in Bloomington told me it would take 50,000 people in Bedford in order to open a Five Guys. So I'm hoping that they all flock to Lawrence County because we could get that Five Guys a little bit quicker. So
That's great for the munchies.
absolutely, I do appreciate all of you guys though for what you do and standing up for the fight. And I will continue to be an advocate and to continue to fight for it here at the home level as well. So,
Well, if we can ever be of help with information for you to use, don't hesitate to holler.
and if you need a haircut, Porter's Barbershop.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm about due one again. For one.
Well, I would
again,
take
I
my
think.
hat off and show you that you probably got more hair than me.
Well, you know, I'm a bit older than you too. So I want to thank everybody for watching us tonight. On behalf of Brian Campbell, Denise Beach, Shelley McDonald, and Darin Kinser, and myself, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you.